How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a video on 10 cheap cars that sound amazing. Now normally I wouldn't do a video like this just because it's quite difficult to choose cars that sound good because sounding good is quite subjective. However, in this video I've chosen 10 cars I think we can mostly agree sound pretty good. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with my picks. And if this video gets 2,000 likes, we'll do the same video again at the £5,000 mark. Don't forget that I'm in the UK, so prices in other countries may differ, and don't forget that whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, road tax, all that good stuff is important to remember. But anyway, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so I am cheating ever so slightly with the first car on this list, but I really didn't want to miss it out. It's the Mercedes S600L, which has sadly increased in price to be just out of our price range for this video, around £11,000 to £12,000 with 70,000 miles on the clock, but it makes such a ridiculous noise I had to include it. As it's out of our price range, I've put it in last place, but the rest of the cars in this video are ordered from 0 to 60. Speaking of 0 to 60, this massive luxury limousine will do the sprint in 4.6 seconds thanks to its 5.5 litre twin turbocharged V12, which makes 500 brake horsepower, giving it the highest stats on this list. So the L after the 600 stands for being a long wheelbase, or basically falling into the limousine category. Of course, as a full-size luxury car, its focus isn't on being fast. Instead, it's meant to give passengers as wonderful a time as possible, and the S-Class is renowned for having the best tech Mercedes have on offer at the relevant time. With this in mind, even though the car was available between 1998 and 2005, if you read the spec sheet, you'll see stuff you won't even get on an average car today. But what makes it so special in terms of the noise is that V12 block. It almost makes an old F1 style noise from the V12 era. The engine used in the Pagani Huayra is in fact a derivative of this exact engine, and what I love about the sound is that it comes across as being very authentic, if that makes any sense. It doesn't matter as much what exhaust you have because the engine itself is ready to give you the symphony of sound. Rust is a key problem on these W220 Mercedes, and the Airmatic suspension is known to go too. Batteries also drain, and there are a few other electrical or sensor based issues to be aware of as well. Next up we have a car brand you might not necessarily consider when thinking about great sounding cars, but the first generation Volvo S60R sounds amazing thanks to its 2.5 litre turbocharged inline 5, making 210 brake horsepower and taking the car to 60 in 6.8 seconds. The S60 sits in the compact executive car class, so it rivals cars like the BMW 3 Series and Mercedes C-Class, but in my opinion it sounds so much better than those rivals thanks to that inline 5. One of the greatest sounds in the car world is a turbocharged inline 5 Audi Quattro S1 E2 going through the Finnish forests during the Group B rally era. Now this is not a Group B rally car, but the engine block formula does make it sound very similar, and for that reason makes it probably my joint personal favourite sounding car on this list. Like the Quattro, it's also an all-wheel drive car and benefits from large Brembo brakes and semi-active suspension for handling, which were co-developed with Öhlins. Basically, this is a properly capable car and massively slept on. These are relatively rare, and I could find them listed starting at around £7,500 with around 70,000 miles on the clock. Go for a manual, as the automatics feel like they lack power according to the owners, and watch out for corrosion around the exhaust, and check for warning lights as there are a lot of electrical systems in this car. Outside of that, owners are very positive about reliability. Next up we have another full-size luxury saloon, this time from Japan, the Lexus LS400, which hosts a massive 4 litre V8 block, which puts out 280 brake horsepower and takes from 0 to 60 in 6.7 seconds. That engine is known as the 1UZ-FE and features in a bunch of Lexuses and Toyotas. And part of the reason why it sounds so good is that it revs to 8,000 RPM, but it even sounds aggressive at the lower revs. Hard not to love the sound of a V8. Partially as a result of that engine, the second gen LS400 was particularly popular on release, and had a bunch of updates to make it longer, better handling, and safer than the previous model, but the designers also wanted to take the key features that made the first gen special and incorporate them too. In the words of the chief engineer, tradition cannot be founded if you reject the first generation, which is probably the wisest words you'll hear in this video. £4,500 the minimum that I could find these listed for, and at £10,000 you're looking at a 1997 example with around 70,000 miles on the clock. The key benefit of these is reliability. Owners rave about the 1UZ, and some have hit 1 million miles on the clock, including fellow YouTuber The Smoking Tire. There are known issues, mostly relating to the suspension or simple wear and tear, but the engine is solid. Next up is probably my personal favourite car on this list, the Alfa Romeo GTV, specifically with the Busso 3-litre V6, which puts out 220 brake horsepower and will make it to 60 in 6.5 seconds. The engine is called the Busso as it was designed by Giuseppe Busso, and it has been heralded by multiple journalists and owners as the best sounding 6-cylinder engine of all time, including Evo magazine and British Classic and Sports Car magazine. Alongside the S60R, this is probably my personal favourite sounding car on this list too. It sings at just the right pitch when pushed. The GTV was designed by Pininfarina, hence it's an absolutely stunning car and a definite future classic with prices already on the up. The wedge shape and camtail actually improves aerodynamics, but I'm not even sure that's important as I'd spend most of my time just looking at it. It also came with the 3.2 version of the Busso block in later life, which you can also find at under £10,000. These start at around £4,500 though, and for 10 grand you'll be looking at a later model with around 50,000 miles on the clock, but it must be said, I don't know how much longer we'll see prices at this level. Experts recommend getting the 3-litre block in phase 2 spec, and not ignoring cam belt service schedules as they're key to longevity on these. Outside of that, it's the normal build issues, and corrosion is known around the sills. In 6th we have a car that is appreciating in price by the day, the VW Golf R32, which is a 3.2 litre VR6 putting out 246 brake horsepower, which takes from 0 to 60 in 6.3 seconds. Now that the first R32 has officially become a classic car, the second is following along, and aesthetically it does seem to be aging very well, as it's a stunning looking Golf. But it also sounds very good too, thanks to that interesting VR6 block. For those of you that aren't aware, it's somewhere between an inline 6 and a V6, with a much shallower angle between the two banks than a V6, but obviously doesn't have just one bank like an inline 6. It's basically a way of maximising the number of cylinders in a smaller space. The culmination of this is quite an aggressive or awkward sounding version of a V6, and on the R32 you can enhance this even more with a nice exhaust. If you get a DSG Auto, you also get the gear change farts too in sport mode, although not as aggressive as some newer cars. £6,000 the minimum that I could find these listed for, and for 10 grand you get a 2007 model with around 90,000 miles on the clock. Coil packs, timing chain tensioners, and rust on the front wheel arches are the 3 main things that owners note on these, and don't forget that DSG boxes can have issues if not looked after. I hope you're enjoying this video. Don't forget 2,000 likes and I'll do the same video again at £5,000 instead. And if you haven't subscribed yet but you want to see 2 videos every single week, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's free and I'd really appreciate it, and I'm super close to 100k at this point, so 9,000 more of you to hit that button and we will be there. On to the top 5 now, and in 5th we have the Subaru Impreza WRX, which is the only 4-cylinder car on this list, with its 2-litre turbocharged boxer 4 making 221 brake horsepower and managing 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. I'll openly admit that 4-cylinders generally don't make the best noise, hence I've had zero interest in making my MX-5 sound good, although I do think it sounds pretty savage. But in boxer layout it definitely makes a very nice deep grumble, and it's pretty easy to tell that a Scooby is on its way over if you know the distinct sound of that engine. Of course, many people put exhaust on these to accentuate that sound even more, but ultimately the point remains the same, and with a nice dump valve for the turbo, these sound very aggressive. rally car aggressive even. You could also get a Legacy or Outback R with the Boxer 6 EZ30 engine, which sounds arguably nicer, but these are quite hard to find. The lowest I could find decent saloons listed for is £6,000, with £10,000 getting a 2005 model with around 100,000 miles on it. This 2-litre block is much more reliable than the 2.5-litre one that came in the later facelift, but worth checking for oil leaks from the cam and sump covers, and the diff is known to leak or whine. Rust is also an issue, particularly around the rear arches. In fourth, we have an absolute beast of a car, though it's pretty rare here in the UK with only 199 on the roads. The Vauxhall Monaro with its 5.7-litre V8 that makes 381 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds. It was built by Holden Special Vehicles in Australia, and on being shipped to the UK it received the Vauxhall badge. Though it has very little to do with the V8 Supercars race series, it's about as close as you'll get to one as a road legal car here in the UK, and that LS1 V8 really does make an angry noise. At the time, it was a very strange car for Vauxhall to release in the UK, and it still kinda remains a weird one. They didn't sell well here, and not many came here in the first place, but they do have a strong cult following, and they don't feel like any other Vauxhalls of the era for obvious reasons. You'll be hard pressed to find one of these, but when they do show up, they start at around £7,500. The LS1 is very reliable, however Holden have sometimes been accused of not giving the car a strong enough clutch and transmission. In addition, the suspension goes under a lot of strain, and they are known to rust around the front chassis rails. I couldn't make this video without including a supercharged car, as I absolutely love the whine in my MX-5. But as an overall noise, the Jaguar XJR definitely has a better sound out of its 4.2-litre supercharged V8, putting out 400 brake horsepower, which takes from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. This is the X350 and X358 generation XJR, though you'll mostly find X350 pre-facelift examples for your 10k. It's another luxury saloon, and again it's a bit of a sleeper. Other than the badging and some minor aesthetic modifications, it just looks like an old Jag. That supercharged V8 block does give its performance away by the noise, and I'm glad that you can actually hear the whine as well as the sound of that gruff V8. You benefit from a whole bunch of luxury features too, with its adaptive air suspension, which is managed by a computer, regal interior, and plush heated steering wheel and leather seats. It's kind of like driving an old fancy hotel's lobby around. £7,000 the minimum that I could find these listed for with high miles, and for 10 grand you'll get a 2007 model with around 90,000 miles on the clock. The engine is surprisingly reliable, however there are known leaks from the cooling system and belt tensioners can wear out. Another surprise is that a lot of the common problems with this aren't actually that expensive to fix according to owners. Of course, you cannot make a video on great sounding cars at this price range without including the Audi S8 with its 5.2-litre V10, which makes 443 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds. The engine is similar, though not exactly the same as the block you'll find in the Lamborghini Gallardo, and it's tuned to be a luxury saloon with wafting kind of power rather than savage supercar kind of power. Either way, a Gallardo derived V10 block was always going to sound good, which it does. It has a lovely S-line interior which is somewhere between sporty and luxury, with bolstered sports seats, stiffer suspension and ceramic brakes if they were originally optioned. Like the Jag, it is a bit of a sleeper if you're not in the know, and it kinda has the potential to become a cult classic with that nutty engine, which rivals the BMW M5, maybe not in terms of sound but at least in terms of how ridiculous it is. These are sadly getting harder to find at under £10,000, but they do appear every so often with high mileage. Carbon build-up is a key problem on these, as are the timing chain tensioners, which are known to wear out over time. The latter is a very expensive fix, so worth checking before buying. Also, owners have noted electrical and suspension problems with these from long-term use. Taking the top spot in this video is the Maserati Coupe 4200 Cambrio Corsa with its 4.2-litre V8 that puts out 390 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. This is the cheapest Ferrari engine block you can buy, and it's shared with the F430, California and 458 in its different guises. Having Having driven 2 of those 3 cars, I can confirm firsthand that it sounds amazing, and Maserati absolutely love to make cars that make a good noise, hence the story is similar in the 4200. You'll be hard pressed to find a facelift example for under £10,000, but you can get the pre-facelift or anything before 2005. That's not the end of the world, as it's already a pretty car, designed by the same man that designed classics like the Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta, Alfa Giulia Sprint GT, and DeLorean. It might be past its prime, but a Ferrari engine with a Ferrari sound for under £10,000 is insane. £9,000 the minimum that you'll find these listed for, so for £10,000 you're still looking at around 75,000 miles on the clock. The paddle shift box is known to have catastrophic issues in these, so if you test drive one and it's jostling around, walk away. It's also bad on electricals, and there's an awkward issue with brake shuddering on some, but the engine actually isn't considered to be too bad. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it, and comment down below to let me know if you agree or disagree with my points, if there's any cars that I missed. Massive thank you to the patrons for their support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.